Hello and welcome to this special Origin review episode of the Rugby League Coach podcast, Origin 2 in 2024. That is the day after the Blues from New South Wales defeated the Maroons of Queensland 38-18. I am with Brendan Rose from the Around the Town with Taylor Brown podcast, and we were going to do it with Taylor, but there's no Taylor today. He's not available, so we're just going to run it on the Rugby League Coach podcast. But it means we can call Taylor names, Brendan.
Oh, we do that even when he's on the podcast.
That's very true. That's very true. You said you feel a bit sick in the guts today. You're not feeling great, but I must ask you, is that because of a genuine illness or because you're a Queenslander?
It's genuine illness today, but I'm pretty sure there's probably 18 plus coaching staff that are feeling pretty ordinary today after at least the performance in the first 40 minutes. But I think, that second half was a little bit. New South Wales probably dropped the intensity, and Queensland probably capitalised it to a degree. But
I will. Yeah. So, mate, just fire away. Give us your reflections on the game.
I think I spoke about it after game one, and I mentioned it on a couple of threads that you've put online. Is I thought Queensland got bullied in the middle. They spoke about Payne Haas during the week. Good work, Queensland. Good work, New South Wales. Put a bomb under probably one of the best props of this decade, let alone of the year. I think we got bullied in the middle. Definitely our back rowers, our edge back rowers got outplayed by their back rowers about 9 or 10 out of 10, where ours were probably, 5 or 6. They were just out-muscled, out-bullied. And congratulations to them, to be fair. I think there's some big calls Billy's going to have to make over the next probably 2 to 3 weeks. But realistically, in the middle, there's not many options to go to.
On Facebook, when I said we were doing this podcast, Julian Hall asked, does Queensland pick and stick?
I think, I'll be honest, I think Sewer. I think going into a game 3, I think you might have to find a spot for Fifita. In regards to the middle of the field, I don't know what you can do. There's no other front rower or middle forward really putting their hand up for Queensland saying, pick me, pick me, pick me. So I think that there, I've been saying it all year. I don't think this is one of Val Holmes' best years. So I don't know where we go for that. That's it.
Over to.
I'm going to have to drop out. I've got to get a quick call.
That's okay. That's all right. I'll talk while you do that. I'm going to share my opinions on New South Wales because Brendan has spoken to the Queensland team. I thought their first half of football was excellent. Obviously, I do feel that some decisions went New South Wales' way, which I will be alluding to a little bit later, particularly as Brendan is a referee. However, that does not and cannot take away from the emphatic nature of their performance in the first half, even though things were very, very even in the second half. In fact, they probably went in Queensland's direction. I thought, in particular, what jumped out for me last night was that the back row of New South Wales was fantastic. That was namely Martin, Angus Crichton, and Cameron Murray. I thought they were far better than their opponents on the other side of the field. And I think the big improvement I saw in New South Wales last night in Origin 2 2024 was the good ball attack. So for those who don't know what good ball is, it's basically from the opposition try line out 30 to 40 meters away from that try line. So basically when you're in a good area, in the past, Brendan has referred to it as the attacking green zone. So you will have heard various names for that. So I thought they were the two big standouts for New South Wales. I did have real trouble predicting who was going to win before the game, Brendan, because I worried about Latrell Mitchell playing centre for the first time in almost a year and a half, 2 years, I think. And I needn't have worried, I don't think. because a lot went New South Wales' way. I was also worried a little bit about Moses' left foot injury, but again, he probably played the best game of football he's played. And I just wonder how much that was a bit of media spin and whatnot.
I agree. I'm not going to go the green ball as I got educated after the last game.
Good ball, green zone. You still can't do it.
Yeah. I think the big difference was Mitchell Moses. I really think he straightened up the attack. There was a couple of times where, and I don't listen to commentators much, but there was a number of times where I think it was Joey Johns was explaining leading up to a try, he was organising his attack, and then what he was trying to work towards ended up coming off, and they scored a try on. And I think Dylan Edwards' try was a big one on that. Yeah, I genuinely think that that it was Moses straightened it up. The kicking game was incredible. It'd be interesting to see what would have happened if, say, for instance, Cleary's available for the third game, which way they go, considering the performance that Mitchell Moses did. He was by far the best player on the paddock for me.
Shane Duncan now suggests that Queensland are now underdogs for the decider despite playing at home, and writing them off in deciders hasn't worked out well. So do you think that, as a Queenslander, do you believe that this is now the perfect storm for them to create that underdog mentality again going into the decider at Suncorp?
Underdog, overdog, whatever dog you want to talk about. At the end of the day, and we're seeing this more and more in the NRL, it's which team gets off the bus, which team gets out of the dressing rooms, and which team actually shows that. Like, the difference between of playing at 95 to 90% and playing at 100% is so huge in our game. So I think Queensland, whether Queensland's the underdogs or not, all that matters is 17 players on 17 players on a field. So you've got to do it. The media can play it up all they want. At the end of the day, it's two teams, one game each, and it's coming down to the third one, just like tonight in the females' State of Origin.
Thanks for putting a date stamp on this again. Thank you. The overwhelming number of questions I got when I asked for them was about officiating, but I'm going to leave that until the latter end of the podcast, because I do, for once, I do have something of a problem with the refereeing, and I'm not a referee bagger per se, but I do want to have a serious discussion with you about that. But I will leave that to now. What we'll do before we do that is do our what we did last time, which was judge the players and from each side. Let's go New South Wales first. I mean, I guess there won't be that much reason to change some of these, but Dylan Edwards.
I thought he was solid. I don't think he had a standout game. He did his job. He scored a try, I guess, but any decent fullback with that, I don't think he did anything that James Tedesco wouldn't have done.
I agree, and he also did make one error in his own half that I'm not convinced Tedesco has a lot of that in him.
But he was never under. Queensland never put him under pressure.
No. No, the Queensland were playing on the back foot an awful lot last night. Brian Toto.
Great game.
Latrell Mitchell.
We saw the real Trell Mitt, as he calls himself. He was able to control his emotion, but still harness that emotion.
Yeah, I thought he was fine. I mean, I'm not saying I've had a real detailed look at his defense and things like that, but then again, did he have to do much in defense? So, Stephen Crichton.
Stephen Crichton was Stephen Crichton. I thought he probably went over the top a little bit in the second half. So if the game was on the line, I think there could have been a different outcome and would have been,
Zach Lomax, I thought his kicking was brilliant.
I think he's overtaken Brian Toto as the best winger in the game.
Quite possibly, immediately anyway. There was something in the news today that Shane Flanagan has been vindicated at the Dragons for putting him on the wing. Jerome Luai.
I thought him and I'll do the two of them. Him and Moses complemented each other really well. There was a lot of times there where he was very good on a short side, especially down that Latrell Mitchell short side. Very good in that.
And the other thing, what we can particularly see now with hindsight, is that Moses has played, I think, 4 Origin games previously, or that was his 4th. And they will have all have been with Jerome Luai, I would assume. So they have something of a combination.
No. His last one was with Cody Walker.
That's right. Yes, that's right. But the other 2 probably were with Jerome Luai. So they do have some combination already. Jake Trbojevic, I really struggle with this one because I don't know what he's doing with him. I mean, he had minimum involvement again in terms of minutes.
Yeah, but then on the flip side is you don't know what he brings into camp as well. And is there another front rower for New South Wales really putting their hand up saying, pick me as well?
I don't think he did anything wrong.
No.
Yeah. And he certainly took it to Queensland in the opening stanza, but what's he doing sitting on the bench for so long in the second half? I don't understand that.
I think he softens them up for Spencer Leniu a little bit. I think
Possibly,
Leniu, yeah.
Reece Robson.
Yeah, it was solid without being like he did his job.
Yeah, he's not much of a threat out of dummy half, is he?
Yeah, I think with a game like that where they're dominating in the middle, I think he's going to lock you up in defense. He's a very good defender. I think he topped the tackle count, but I don't know if he'll bring a lot in attack like he did in game 1. But he was he gave Mitchell Moses and he gave their ball players the ball when they wanted it, and he gave it early, and it was good ball, not a dodgy pass.
Payne Haas, you've already referred to him somewhat.
I thought he was the best forward on the field. Some of those carries were really good.
I'm going to speak about the back row and as a collective: Liam Martin, Angus Crichton, Cameron Murray.
I don't think we need to talk any more about. I think you explained it earlier on. They just, especially those 2 edge back rowers, they just bullied the Queensland edge back rowers.
Connor Watson had something of a stint at the end.
Yeah, it was a bit of a You don't get much from when he came on. Yeah.
Isaiah Yeo.
Very good. I think
agree.
he just ran the ball.
I also noticed he was captain when Jake Trbojevic was off. Hamole Olakoatu.
He's a bit like Connor Watson. Didn't really see a lot of him.
I agree. And Spencer Leniu, I thought his go forward was brilliant.
I think Jake Trbojevic makes him look better. I think if you brought him on, if you started him, he just wouldn't have the same effect.
All right, over to Queensland. Did Reece Walsh play last night?
Yeah. Reece Walsh's game, was that his fault? Probably not. I think he needs to evolve his game a little bit. I think teams are starting to pick. He's always coming out the back. I think he needs to evolve it and hit the opposition in different areas. But mind you, that game didn't really give him an opportunity to do anything.
To be fair, he threw a really nice ball really early in when Queensland made a break down the left. Xavier Coates.
Hard to say. Didn't really get into the game. His aerial threat wasn't really there because they weren't kicking. There wasn't many attacking kicks.
There was an interesting jump when he jumped absolutely nowhere near the ball and over Brian Toto.
Did you see Latrell Mitchell? He knows where the ball's going to land, and he's stopping 1 or 2 meters in where the guy runs in. It's a very smart play.
Valentine Holmes.
I thought he would. He reminded me how he's playing for the Cowboys all year. He sort of comes in and out of games, and he can make some critical errors both in defense and attack.
Hamiso Tabuai-Fidow, my favourite player in the comp.
I think when they played down the short side there, he was very good at times, but he was also hampered by that shoulder injury as well. I thought of the 2 centres, he was by far the better Queensland centre.
Murray Tuolangi.
Zach Lomax made him look ordinary.
Tom Dearden and Cherry Evans.
It's hard once
playing behind a Peyton pack, to be fair.
Yeah. I thought Tom Dearden, Mitchell Moses did really well getting into his face. There was a couple of times when they would look like they were on the attack, and then Mitchell Moses would jam out of defence and he'd knock the ball on in some good field position.
Ruben Cotter and Lindsay Collins.
I reckon Ruben Cott was getting bullied. I think he's framed. I love the bloke. He's got a heart the size of Firelap, but I just don't know without Tino, without Flegler, whether how he fits into that rotation without getting bullied.
Ben Hunt.
Oh, Ben. Once again, what do you do as a dummy half when your pack's getting beaten
Pack's
up?
getting beaten up, yeah.
Yeah.
I won't do the back row as a collective on this occasion. Jaden Sewer.
I think he would be looking over his shoulder.
Jeremiah Nanai.
He showed some really good signs, but I think he'll be better for the run.
Going back to Jaden Sewer, I assume he's looking over his shoulder because of David Fifita.
Yeah, I thought he wasn't. He had glimpses of good stuff in the first game, same in the second game, but he made some crucial errors on. Yeah, he was up against Liam Martin when that first try was, and he seems to tuck in. He leaves a gap in the defensive line on the try line. Him and Tom Dearden don't seem to be talking well together.
Patrick Carrigan.
I think Patrick Carrigan did what Patrick Carrigan did, but he's like Payne Haas used to be. No one went with him.
He started well, Pat Carrigan.
Yeah.
Harry Grant.
This is Harry's work. I haven't seen Harry Grant play so bad for 2 games back to back. But once again, there's not a lot you can do behind a beaten pack.
Felice Kafusi.
Didn't do a lot. I thought he was going to be a bit of an intimidator in the middle of the field, but he didn't seem to get into the game. He's made some good runs with some late footwork, but yeah, I just don't know where Queensland do with their middles, to be fair.
Moaka Fotuaika.
Same as he worked hard, but he just didn't have the same impact that the New South Wales bench did.
And Kurt Capewell.
Willie played in the centres for a long time. Yeah.
Dane Gagai didn't get on, did he? And neither did Mitchell Barnett.
No.
I'd had a couple of beers while I was watching it, so just checking. I didn't forget. Okay. I want to talk to the comeback in the second half. So if you're Billy Slater and you're looking at positives, 2 very different halves, weren't they?
I think, yeah, you've got to be realistic, though. New South Wales come out in that first half. They were so intent, the intensity. They dropped that intensity in the second half. They knew they were up 32-0. They probably knew if they defended well, don't make errors, they're going to do all right. But mind you, too, there was some really good signs on the left edge with Dearden, Reece Walsh, Hamiso, and Murray. They were making some inroads down that edge in the second half. There was a couple of really good breaks down that edge. But
I look at it slightly differently. I think, and Gus Gould spoke about this in the lead up, that Melbourne was something of a comfort blanket for Queensland because they've got Suncorp Stadium to fall back on in Game 3. And I think sometimes that can put you off 100% performance, just a tiny bit, just a fraction. And there's a thought in the NRL that if you don't turn up physically and mentally, you get rolled. And I guess that can, if that's true, then that can be exacerbated in Origin. And I think that happened a little bit until they sort of switched on at half time and said, "Oh, we're back on here." There were some things that turned that as well, and I think it's a good time to bring this up now. And I know, Brendan, that there is a undercurrent around the whole game. And when I say the whole game, I mean fans, people involved in the game, players, coaches. They do talk that administrations would love there to be a decider and for viewing figures and things like this. And people do throw this around, but it can be fixed in some way by a referee to make sure that there's a decider. Now, that brings me to thinking, how could a referee fix the game in the modern age? And I was I was talking with someone on Tuesday, and I suggested that the 6 again rule is a great place for that to be hidden if there is any kind of undercurrent there. Now, I'm not alleging there was an undercurrent. I'm just saying people say this, and if it was to happen, how could they do it? And the overwhelming number of complaints I got in the questions were about the refereeing. Okay. So I'll read them all out. 6 again is a blight on the game. That was from Bill Casey. So that wasn't a question, it was a statement. Christian Marlowe, on a scale of 1 to 10, please rate the refereeing. Tony Batoya, when will Asher Klein ever be made accountable for his biased refereeing? You only need to see how obvious it was early in the second half with his dubious decisions against New South Wales and 6 agains. Tim Jimmy Lee Cheong, Klein killed the second half blue dominance as soon as he sent off players for a bit of push and shove. It changed the game 12-12. This is Origin, seriously. Matthew Reid, can you talk about the game 1 decision to send Suaalii off and how it was warranted? The fact that Reece Walsh has now missed 2 Origins. Merlin Phillips, please let us know what you think about the piggybacks, building a decider for game 3. Des Dayton, why wasn't Martin at least sin-binned, if not sent off for the spear tackle? I can't believe the inconsistency. Perhaps Klein was under official orders not to have one team with 12. So this stuff is out there, isn't it? Right? So over to you, B. Rose.
I think, see, the issue is, and the 6 to go can be blamed on coaches. Okay, there was a number of times before the 6 to go came in, teams would be attacking the try line. They would purposely give a penalty away, which gave them, 10, 15, 20, 30 seconds to energize. And if they gave, 1 or 2 away, but then the flip side of it with 6 to go, there's no real accountability for the penalty. It just happens.
We never go back at half time, do we? And say, let's analyze these 6 again.
Yeah, it just happens. And then the game keeps going and there's no real scrutiny. So those 50-50 calls could quite easily could be that. I agree with you. If you wanted to push the envelope, that's where you do it in the 6 to go.
Yeah.
In regards to last night, one thing Origin does is it polarizes people.
Yeah.
I don't care what anyone says. New South Wales were the better team. Yeah, there was that period early in the game when there was about 15 tackles, but Queensland were off the line. They were in the ruck. Both teams were pushing in the ruck. That Liam Martin one, going on NRL, he probably would have got 10 in the bin. Nothing would have changed in the outcome of the game. If the only person who really needs to be pissed off about that one would be Roger Tuivasa-Sheck. I wouldn't be saying that Queensland really, really went there. I think I've said it on a couple of your threads. Queensland, the referee doesn't make one-on-one tackles. The referee doesn't do bad reads in defence.
Yeah.
But the thing is, though, is through the 6 again, they can fatigue players, which then means that their error rates are going to increase.
Can I just butt in there, Brendan? I remember I said earlier that I thought, that Gus mentioned there was a comfort blanket of Suncorp Stadium for Queensland. So that just makes you think, as a Queensland player, I would have thought that it doesn't actually matter if you lose because you've got game 3. And therefore, you might not quite be as
intense.
I'm sort of trying to think of a better word than that. Or up for the game. Not, instead of being 100 intensity, you'd be 98 kind of thing. And on the flip side of that, New South Wales really had to produce last night or else they were going down again. If you look back at the game, the first 10, 15 minutes were really equal. We're really equal and really even. It was actually Queensland who made the breaks.
Yeah.
But then as New South Wales were bombarding the Queensland line somewhat, they got 2 6 again calls.
Yeah.
and they scored their first try on a bit of on the back of a six again. Now I believe they were the first two in the game, and
So what happened? What happened is there was one set of six where I think there was even 3 6 to goes. Queensland held them out, but they dribbled it in. They got a repeat six.
yeah,
Reset. Then they went long rather than short.
yeah,
I think there might have in that next set of six, they scored on the edge. That's when Martin scored.
Yeah.
But then that's that first try, but there wasn't, like, if you look at a lot of the other tries, they weren't on the back of six agains all the time.
No, all right. So let me finish what I was saying. So we have this undercurrent around the game of the fixes on to get a decider for the viewing figures and this, that, and the other, right? It's in the game, isn't it, Brendan? It's a fact, right? The talk is in the game. It's not a fact that it happens. It's the talk is a fact, right? So imagine that's in the back of the mind of some players' heads.
Yeah.
And the first 3 6 agains are given. All of a sudden, when you're defending your own line, I have a little bit of a theory that Queensland dropped another 5% after that try was scored, because they'd been the more dominant side, marginally. And then New South Wales got a few 6 agains, and then repeat sets. And when you look back at the game, I think you'll find that, and I'm not blaming the referee for this, right? But I'm blaming the Queensland attitude, I think. Billy will ring me up and have a go at me now, but they definitely just knocked off a little bit then. And New South Wales just beat them to the punch with everything. Absolutely everything.
Also, too, I think if you watch when New South Wales are getting on top, it's when they're really dominating the middle. And if you're a smaller pack, you can hold your gloves up for a certain amount of period of time. But as the game goes on, and then you bring in impact off the bench, e.g. Luai, Isaiah Yeo, they scored their points from, I think it was about 15 minutes into about 5 minutes to go in that first half, is because Queensland held their gloves up, and that forward pack held their gloves up, and the second rows held their gloves up for a set, but they just got weared down. Yes, that 6 to go calls are gonna speed up that wearing down process. But I think the thing that you need to point in there is if a coach feels within his team there's an undercurrent of, we've got the safety net of Queensland, that's his responsibility to make sure that they don't fall back.
Agreed. And also, I would have hoped, I would rather win the series in game 2 so you can have a party in game 3, you know?
Yeah.
But yeah, you do wonder. I remember watching the England-Tongan series last year and picking up something in that first test, and I thought, why are Tonga getting 6 agains against them all of a sudden? And it got me thinking. And look, I'm not accusing referees of everything, but it does make you wonder sometimes. It really does, because so many people talk about it. And if you also look at some of the recent history of Origins, I remember when the worst Queensland team ever were playing for Wayne Bennett against New South Wales, and they won the first game in a close game. Second game blew out by 50, and then they won the close one at the end in the third. And I remember back then Wayne told them not to worry and this, that, and the other. So it does make you wonder. You could sort of, I think this is why I found it so hard to predict. I think.
I agree on you. And obviously New South Wales coming in, they know they have to win, so they're going to be up.
Something else I want to talk to Brendan, because we only want this to be a short pod, don't we? The 6 again and potential score blowout cause. So a lot of scores are blowing out at the minute. So somebody said to me 38-18 is not a blowout. Well, 34-0 at halftime is, though.
Yeah.
And it's also Origin. Origins traditionally have been 18-16 and 20-18 and things like that. The NRL games recently have been very, 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 very high scoring. And it's a pattern that's been going on for about 2.5 months now. What's going on, Brendan?
I think a big part of it is obviously the talent's being diluted to a degree through injuries, through an extra team. But then also too, I think the coaching and the resources and the analysis that's going into the game, players' weaknesses, bad habits, are getting identified a lot better. And also too, and the ability for teams to do it week in, week out isn't there as much. Like Billy has 3 games. Billy, they're talking about him coaching every team in the NRL, but at the end of the day is he only has to get a team up for 3 games. Getting a team up for 27 games is a totally different story, especially too if you get some quality players out beside it. And that's the reason why the Storm is so good. That's the reason why the Penrith Panthers are so good. If you take out a few teams, like Parramatta at the bottom of the table, if Parramatta play their best footy on the day, they can beat anyone. And I think it's the coaches and the players' ability to get into the grind week in, week out and play at that 95 to 100% every week. If you don't do that, you're going to get blown away.
Dan Lockyer asked me a question, and I'm actually going to leave it, Dan, until this next week's Rugby League Coach podcast, the weekly offering, because that's something that I want to really go into depth with, and I want to keep everything about Origin on this occasion. Thanks so much for listening to this special episode of the Rugby League Coach podcast post Origin 2 2024. I have been Lee Addison.
And I've been Brendan Rose.
Hopefully we still will be. What do you reckon, mate?
Yeah, hopefully.
Thanks for giving up a bit of your time on a Thursday, mate. Cheers.
No problems at all, mate. Have a good weekend.
You too.